And I'm talking to the principal and I'm thinking to myself, like, dude, I don't know anything about it. Like, and she's saying, Titus, I think you're worried about getting on a team. My coach is kind of worried on me. Like, all of this is building up in my mind while I'm sitting on the bench talking to this guy. Because, like, he doesn't know that I want to do this thing. In the back of my mind, my grades are hitting me. And this sucks. Welcome, my name is Titus Rhodes, and this is Young Clarity, a podcast about thinking differently no matter how old or young you are. Whether it's creativity, self-improvement, or even your faith, we talk about it all. Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to episode 7 of the Young Clarity podcast. I'm your host, Titus Rhodes, and today, welcome to another episode, guys. It's awesome to be in community with you guys. I feel like it's been a minute. For me, it's been a long week, and because it's been such a long week, I've been kind of having an issue when it comes to planning out when to finally film this episode. I usually film on Thursdays. Today we're filming on Friday. It's just, I am a very routine-based person. Sometimes when I get off my routine, I get very confused really fast. I'm like, oh crap, I gotta do this, I gotta do this, I gotta do this. This is going to be the first 2-part series for this podcast. We're gonna go over the first part about this, and then the second part is gonna be shown next week. So heads up, make sure you leave a like, subscribe, follow, do all the stuff you have to do so you don't miss the second part of this. This is a story about being underqualified, missing every deadline, and still chasing after something for the sake of the dream. This story is very emotional for me. It's something that I share not as often when people ask me how I got started as an artist and when I learned why I decided to do all of this stuff. And it's kind of leading, because we're getting to episode 10 soon, to our big season finale. And I do have to say I'm very thankful for a lot of you guys in listening. So this is a story of like how I became an artist and what I learned in my journey. This story starts freshman year of high school. And when COVID hit my freshman year, that's when it was a very isolating time. But before that, it was no different than any point of my life. And when I say that, I say there was many people who were really struggling when it came to the virus and its attack on them. I mean, there was a lot of loss of life and people were really struggling, and it was just a hard time to be alive, really, I think, in America and really the world. And because of that, people were very isolated. Now, I will have this thing I always say to people whenever they ask me about how my experience was. I was like, it wasn't that bad in terms of like I was just I didn't have many people to talk to before, so it was like, oh, everybody else is like me, like it's a very sad way of saying it, but it's a testimony to my social life. But I think what really stands out though about this story is that it's freshman year, right? It's freshman year. I'm in a new school. I'm in a new high school. And it's the type of school where everybody knows each other. So they've been knowing each other since 8th grade, since they were babies, since they came out the womb. It's just everybody knows everyone. And I'm the new guy. I've been there for about 2 months now. I don't know many people besides people in my class. I don't talk to many people who are older than me. I don't talk to many people who are around me. I'm very not social. And I really struggled with that my freshman year, trying to get out of my shell. And in those last 2 months, though, I really tried my best to be sociable. I'm naturally like a funny guy who makes jokes and silly, stupid stuff. And that's really what's always kept me afloat, I think. And as I was spending my time talking to my friends and stuff like that in class, it's freshman year again, first hour, the bell goes off, the intercom goes off, they give the morning announcements, and suddenly in the morning announcements, they say, hey everyone, we have a new musical is now being announced. It is The Lion King, and auditions were something like 6 weeks. And the intercom basically said that. And as the intercom was saying that, I remember I was turning to my friend, and his reaction was, and by friend, he was a guy who I sat by. So he was really the only guy I really talked to. And I was talking to my friend about this, and I was saying, oh my gosh, dude, did you hear about the musical? What are you thinking about doing it? And he was like, no. And he was kind of like, he wasn't a very sociable guy either. I don't know what it is about freshmen, but there's this almost stereotype that you have to be awkward. Like you can't just be normal. So you got to be awkward in some sense. Otherwise, like people don't like you. So I'm talking to my friend about this. I'm looking around the room. Some people are getting excited. Some people are not getting excited. And I'm very like nervous, right? Because I'm just thinking to myself, how in the world am I going to do this? And because I'm into this. I'm into this, by the way. Like I don't know if I said that prior, but I want to do this. Up to then, all the stuff I did performing arts wise was like at church programs or whatever. This seems like to me like something cool to do. Because if there's one thing I always love to do, it's always going to make someone happy. So I'm doing this thing and I'm planning about this whole musical, and this musical is going through my mind. And the intercom says in 6 weeks the auditions are going to happen. I'm not completely alone. All right. I said I was alone, but I still did events during the school. So I was part of the cross country team. That's how I knew my friend who sat right by me from cross country. And I knew other people from cross country, but I didn't really talk to them much. I talked to him more because I saw him mostly throughout my day. And then also I did basketball. So I tried doing basketball. Now, one little thing I always like to say is that I participated in a lot of sports, but I was not much of a player. I was a participant in all the sports I played because, truthfully, I'm not the best at sports. And I can completely say that with confidence now because I don't have to be the best at sports. And I usually, if you ever hear me, I'm always saying, oh my gosh, I'm so good at sports, but that's a lie. I'm not good at sports at all. I'm just not really the best at basketball or cross country. I could barely run half a mile. I could barely jump and run around the court. And really, in reality, I would always be like the guy who would clean up. I was kind of like the water boy. I didn't really, I was just not the guy who would play sports. And that's not where my purpose was. That's not where I could find my people. So when I talk to people, I often became like the butt of jokes because I was just not into that whole thing. And I'm talking to my friend about this musical idea. He's really into. He was actually a musician who played violin, so he was very much like he was really musical talented, but I think he was just really afraid of just talking to other people and hanging out with other people because he didn't want to embarrass himself. And that's one of the biggest fears when you're younger is you're afraid of embarrassing yourself. And we talked about that prior in other episodes about caring what other people think. And he was one of those people that really cared. I cared what people thought about me, but I knew that I wanted to do this musical. The teacher walks in the class after the intercom goes off. She hangs something on the board, and hangs like this QR code. And this QR code has this thing where you can scan it, and when you scan it, it can open up to like these different PDFs that have different monologues in them. I scan the thing on the door, and I get the PDFs. And I look for the characters inside of it. Now, mind you, this musical is The Lion King. There's not too many options to choose from. I'm scrolling through the list. I'm scrolling through the list. I see Simba. I ignore Simba. I see Timon. I see Pumbaa. I see all these guys. I see all these things on here. I see Scar. I see all these different characters. So I really decided to play the character of Timon, which is the meerkat. Looking at his lines are simple. It's like right before they go into Act Two. And if you know what Act Two of The Lion King is, it's like that transition between him going from young Simba to older Simba. So I'm like, maybe I can go do Timon. So I'm practicing his lines and stuff like this, but I was really hooked on the show. And I mentioned this to some people that I wanted to do this musical, but not many people wanted to do it, except for one guy on my basketball team. And he was kind of like me. Now, he didn't play at all either. So we were both on the bench during the middle of games, just chatting about this musical. And it was very weird. And like I told my brother this, and my brother just said, like, my brother was always into like the idea of like, hey, before you get into the game, you should really prep yourself up and get in the right headspace. You should be watching basketball highlights. I don't ever watch basketball. Like if you like, I try to act like I do, but I don't watch basketball. So I'm watching basketball highlights a little bit. I'm watching like fake LeBron and Kobe Bryant. I'm watching like the basic stuff, right? And I turn it off after like 10 minutes because I don't really care. Because my whole timeline is filled with this Lion King musical. I became obsessed with this musical because for some reason it just kept calling my name. I I I never cared about musicals, never did any theater experience prior, never did any of that stuff, but this was so cool to me that this was what was really keeping me motivated throughout this whole entire lonely period of my life. So I'm talking to my one friend about this, and we weren't even really friends. When I say this too, that like I call these people friends, but we weren't friends at the time. We were just people who I just saw every day. So I'm talking to him about this. He's like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna do it too." I'm really excited about it, and yeah, man, I got my grades up, and I'm really happy about this. And I got to be careful with my grades. And I was like, now mind you, I wasn't the best student either. So I was not only lonely, I was not only a bad student, I was also completely ignorant to the fact that grades kind of mattered this much because I was already nervous. Now, here's another note I left out of this story. On the basketball team, I never played a lot, but I wasn't great at school. And since I wasn't great at school, my grades were actually good. So I was actually brought in often to the office and they would talk to me. They'd be like, Titus, we need to sit you down. We need to talk to you about your grades because you're really doing bad. And I was a C to D student. I was a C D student. I had like 1A and I was in art. And even then I would like fail art. And I think I passed art with a B because I couldn't do any of the tests. And it's not like I have dyslexia. It's not like I have any other problems. Even when I was grading, I was in the lower math always. I just was not ever that great when it came to doing schoolwork. So I just constantly talked about this musical with him, and I was really nervous because I kept going to the office to go to the principal's office. And I'm talking to the principal, and I'm thinking to myself, like, dude, I don't know anything about like. And she's saying, Titus, I think you're worried about getting on a team. My coach is kind of worried on me. Like all of this is building up in my mind while I'm sitting on the bench talking to this guy, because like he doesn't know that I want to do this thing, but I'm in the back of my mind. My grades are hitting me. My grades are hitting me. My parents are talking to me about it. They're like, and my mom and dad, they weren't very mean about it either. That's one thing I gotta say. They tried their very best to be as supportive as they could in the situation that I was in. And that was one thing I could say is that I would be upset too if my kid was doing this because he to me it feels weird. It's like, okay, the kid comes home, he says he does his homework, and then he goes in his bedroom, closes the door, and starts singing the Lion King. He goes into his room and closes the door and starts singing the Lion King. He's singing Circle of Life. And I'm wondering why there's like a big circle F mark on his paper. And I'm like, I was just so entrapped into this thing. And I was just, it was just certain classes where I just did not get it. Like geography at the time. You could not explain to me geography. And even now, I'm really bad with directions. I tell this people all the time, I'm like, I'm not the best with directions. And they're like, really? And it's like, I don't know what north and south was. So when they had a geography thing, they would give us things to do. And this is a sidebar. They would give us things to do to go write notes and coordinates on the wall. And I could never do it. So I was really not the best at this thing, but I really, really cared about this musical. And life went on, time passed on, and about 4 weeks hit. The musical, like I said, is in 6 weeks, so now it's 2 weeks left. Now, what I did not know, after coming out the principal's office again, walking out her office, by this point, I knew her by name. I know this woman by name. She knows me by name. She knows me. I'm the new kid. I'm the new freshman kid who really struggles with school and class. The people at the office know me. Everybody knows me because I'm there like every 2 weeks or something. I know someone's walking out her office, and it's actually the director who's the theater director at the school. First time I ever met this woman. I did not know any of the theater people in my school either because there was apparently a drama class. I wasn't in the drama class. I wasn't in a drama class. I was in like this. I was just completely new kid. And I really was not great with my grades. And I remember I passed by her and I said, hi, how you doing today? She was like, hi, what's your name? I was like, my name is Titus. I want to know more about the musical. And she was like, oh, great. Did you fill out the papers? Now, mind you, I completely forgot about these papers. Now, in order to do, if you've ever been in a musical or school production before, you got to get papers before you can actually do the show. Otherwise, they can't like get paperwork to pay for your shirts, your books, all the stuff that you need to make this thing happen. Now, I did it for the basketball team, but that was completely different. That was kind of like on the first day, you could come to class, they'll give you the papers then. But for this, you had to go to the office and grab the papers. Now, I'm looking at the office that I've been walking in and out of, and I barely notice the paperwork that's sitting on front of the desk, and it's a big paperwork in front of the desk, and it's literally like it's a little basket, and on the left side are papers that you're supposed to grab and take home and get your parents to sign. And on the right side is a stack of papers of people who've turned it in. Now, the stack on the right side was so big that I missed it. I was like, I thought that was something else. It was just a stack of papers of people getting ready for the musical. And then there was another stack that was like a little small stack, and it was like little ruffles of pepper, like papers and whatnot. And people were grabbing stuff, I guess, out of it and like ripping it apart. Like it wasn't completely whole. I probably had like I probably didn't even have all the paperwork. And I remember I just looked at her. I was like, looked at her while she was walking out the office, and we had a little conversation. And I looked over there and saw the paperwork. I grabbed the paperwork and I grabbed that paperwork and I went home. And I remember I went home and talked to my mom about this. And my mom, up to now, I've never shown so much interest probably for anything at the school yet. I was just like, Mom, I really want to do this musical. And she was like, Oh yeah, I can tell you've been singing this song. They're doing a musical at your school. I was like, Yeah, they're doing the musical at the school. She's like, Oh my gosh, are you gonna go for the lead? Are you gonna be Simba? And she spent so much time. My mom's a gem because we sat down and I remember we spent like a whole night, me, my mom, my dad, we just sat there, we watched the Disney movie on on like Netflix or Disney Plus at the time. And and we watched it all the way through and I would like hum the song and I was enjoying the story and I was encapsulated into this because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna act. And I don't know anything. I don't know a single thing. So I get the papers, I give it to her, and she looks at it and she sees like a grade requirement on the paper. And she looks at me and asks me the question. She's like, "Are you sure you're going to be able to do this? Like, your grades aren't good right now. Your grades aren't even good for basketball. How are you going to do the musical? You got to get some grades. You got to get your grades up." So when she told me that, 2 weeks are still going, I'm thinking to myself, okay, there's a test coming up in like my all my classes. It's like it's the part of the season right now of the musical was like it would auditions were like November something, and I think December was the decision, and then I believe next year was like really the rehearsal and stuff like that because by May we would be performing. It was like that kind of standard school theater kind of workshop type thing they do. And I'm looking at my mom and I'm like, well, there's a test coming up and I'm studying. And after that, I've never been more motivated to study. I remember I woke up at like 5 a.m., pulled out all my textbooks, sat down on my kitchen island and worked all the way up to my dad got ready to go and take me to school. And I did that for like a day right before the test. And I it's funny because you think you don't realize that you can't memorize a whole entire textbook in one day and then walk out the door. But I tried to. I tried to do that. And I like looked at my dad. He was like, "Yeah, okay. You look like how many tests you have today?" I was like, "4." "How many did you study for?" "I studied for the hardest one, and that was geography. I studied for geography all morning long. And it was probably like 3 hours. It probably wasn't that long. It was like 3 hours of studying because I know I don't really study. I never really studied up to that point. And I'm going to class and it's geography test, and we sit down and I'm just like I'm nervous because I'm thinking to myself, I have to pass. I'm like only thing that's going through my mind is I have to pass to get into the musical. I have to pass. So we do the test. We do the test. We do the test. Test goes by, and I think like it's lunchtime. It's like 6 hour, and I get called again to the office, and they sit me down and they talk to me about my grades again. And by then she was asking me because she was keeping up with me because me and my principal were both looking forward to this test that was coming up. We were both looking forward to this because we were like, "Hey, how are you feeling about the test you just took? How do you feel?" Because at this point, I'm like, they're worried they're gonna kick me out of the class. I'm worried they're gonna kick me out of school. Like I'm gonna get flunked out. And I'm sitting with the principal talking to her about this, and she's like looking forward to like me taking this test. And so not only am I stressed out, I'm worried about this test that I just took. The principal just told me this is the last chance I have. I really want to do this thing. I'm not really playing sports and basketball. I'm not getting any game time. Um, and I just go and I remember I just did not know anything. I'm thinking about what the principal's saying. I'm thinking about all this stuff that's going through my mind about this. And I'm kind of worried about what my results are. And I go back home and I'm talking to my dad, and he sees me kind of worried. And I'm very unmotivated because I don't think I passed. I don't think I passed. A week goes by. A week goes by. So now it is now the week of auditions now. And it's the week of auditions. And auditions are on Friday. And auditions are on Friday, and I'm talking to my dad, and I'm worried about this. And the grades came back, and I did not pass the class. I didn't pass the test. I failed the test. I failed the test. And this sucked. This sucked, man. This absolutely sucked. I failed this test, and I was so hurt by it because I really wanted this. I really wanted this. And um my teacher knew I wanted it too. She knew. I told her about it. Um, so I didn't pass the test. Auditions are this week, and I'm in the car with my dad, and we go out and go. We're going to drive somewhere, and I mean, all throughout the week, he's been kind of seeing me moping because I really want something I couldn't get him, and I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, dude, I failed the class, I failed the thing, and now I'm not able to do the one thing I wanted to do. We're driving down the street. My dad like pulls into the parking lot and he stops and he looks at me. He says, "What are you gonna do?"